Morning all, let's look at another amazing game from the Grand Chess Tour Paris, the Rapid section. This is Magnus Carlsen against Veselin Topalov. d4 we see knight f6, c4 g6, knight f3, bishop g7, so we have some kind of Neo-Grünfeld here. g3, black castles, bishop g2, d5, so this makes it a kind of Grünfeld variation. C takes, knight takes, white castles. There's been over 2,000 games from this position. Black voluntarily retreats the knight here without waiting to be kicked. Knight c3, knight c6, and often e3 is played in this position, over 2,000 games. Magnus chose another popular move, nearly 1,000, with d5. Have a quick look at e3 for those interested. This line is quite topical. So there's a debate about white center or black. Is black going to be able to exploit the weaknesses later? Okay, so let's see. In this game though, d5, kicking knight immediately, e4, and we have now bishop f4 after that c6. Black's first threat of the game, basically, that's protected that b2 pawn, and indirectly defending d5 because c4 is slightly loose now. So for example, just to show knight takes, we can just take on c4. So we have bishop g4, h3, black takes there, so black's voluntarily giving up that light square bishop, and now the idea to break that center and open some activity for the rooks. So e5, that's actually taken here. So black seems to have a fairly active position. There's no bad piece here, but white has that bishop pair in this position and pressure on b7 right now. And Topalov lashes out actually with g5. It is slightly weakening on the light squares, but can these actually haunt black later, these light square weaknesses, or not? Rook fd1 hitting the queen, and now bishop d2. So actually white, if he has another move, he'll play knight d5 to be able to take on c4, and that's very nice pressure. Rook d8, but actually knight d5 is played here anyway, and you might think, well, has that threat actually been missed? Yeah, what's black's best thing to do? Well, you know, maybe just taking on d2 is okay for black. It's actually given as a, you know, technically this is an advantage for white though, this position. I guess this knight isn't so well placed. White is very well poised for that d5 square. So it's kind of pleasant for white in this position. So yeah, maybe that's why knight takes d2. It doesn't seem that appetizing. So we see knight d5, and now queen takes c4. This still looks fairly pleasant for white. Now we have rook e1, and now very, very clever use of the light squares actually. And the queen can't be a target in this particular position because the queen's just taking the parking spot for the knight. There's no easy way to kick the queen from there, and the queen does support rook c8, trying to exploit black's kind of vulnerable back row in this position. So rook c8 is facilitated by queen g4, and there doesn't seem, I mean, also the principal threat immediately is bishop takes g5, of course. But it also supports rook c8. So there's two ideas for queen g4. It's actually a really clever move. It's not just about g5 here. And we see that now. Rook c8. And there's a threat now of rook e8 check. And you can see these light squares do become an issue if the king has to step across onto the light squares. That diagonal is going to be near fatal. You know, we've got a bishop there. We can, yeah, it's going to be horrible. So rook e8 is a clear and imminent threat now, and black is forced to go into a dreaded self-pin basically after bishop f8, and maybe the most clinical way of exploiting this, I dare say smoother, as Maurice Ashley might say, smoother, would be rook e8. If this is against absolute best play, what Magnus played is still exploiting this self-pin concession with what he played, which is bishop takes d5. But let's for the moment look at maybe the most technically accurate continuation, rook e8. We have this self-pin here, and in this position, in this kind of scenario here, there's a nasty threat now of queen e8, and so here, then this kind of thing leads white to a winning endgame, basically, scenario. But even this, in a rapid game, this might be a little bit tricky. In the game, we have bishop takes d5. Now, this looks entirely logical because the bishop goes on this wonderful diagonal, and we seem to have contributed to white's, basically advantages. Not only this underlying pin here, but this fantastic bishop. This seems a great, continuation in any case. But actually here, behind the scenes here, black played rook takes e8. There is a way with best play for black to have fought on here, but you need to be like a computer, I think. It's check and to take here, and now there's deadly threats in this position, of rook takes first to be check, and then queen takes, because otherwise, if we take it here, there's check here, winning the rook. So there's deadly threats in this position, but they can be parried, it seems, with queen d3, because there's also a threat of bishop b4 if black is not doing anything. But this would guarantee equality, because this continuation, very forceful, but it's all very good here for black, at least for equality or winning. So this position here after queen d3, if this emerged on the board, the situation technically is equal. So if white goes for it, he's just losing after queen f1 check. You can see the king being chased is not a happy thing. So if queen takes, queen e2 is mate. If king takes, queen takes f2, and this is leading to a disaster. So basically, this is the one scenario where black might have been able to escape. In fact, white might be having to play queen e2, and then that pin is not worth. Okay, it's not fatal. Black can secure the first rank. So that is if and only if the rook d1 check idea had been played, then taking, then queen d3. So it is logically tapping into the light squares. Maybe in a longer time control, this doesn't seem too hard to find in theory in a longer time control. But in rapid, this idea was just this. So rook takes e8 leaves that horrible self pin, and there's a horrible threat now of bishop b4 to exploit that pin. We have check. This is far too ineffectual compared to the other line, because there's a really elegant kind of crushing blow here played in the form of bishop e1, and now the bishop is held by the rook, which is also pinning this, which means queen b4 now is threatened, and the back row is terrible. Black tries to unpin now with king g7, but now queen f3 threatens the rook, and the game ended here. Topalov resigned, presumably. If we look at this position, it is technically lost. I'll give you an example: rook d6, bishop b4. That's no good. That's just going into that skewer. Rook d7, we have bishop c3 check. The bishop springs back on this killer diagonal, and if here, then queen f6. And in fact, queen g7 is threatened because of that pin piece, as well as queen h8 checkmate. So both of these checkmates are threatened, and f2 is held. You see, there's not enough counterplay here for black to handle this. If rook d3, black, that's the only way maybe to black to play on, giving up the exchange, but it's just hopeless, this scenario. So okay, what Magnus played seemed entirely clear and logical from a human perspective when he took on d5 and played bishop c3, and it was beautiful the way, you know, bishop e1 was perfect move actually, creating impossible problems for black to handle. So let's go to the final position. So queen f3, the queen is protecting f2, the bishop's ready to spring back. There's huge problems here basically that black cannot handle. Let's have a look at queen d3 while we're here actually, just to check again this position. It's hopeless. You see that pin is on the cards again. Here queen e7, we can start exploiting the pin, and there's no way to defend the pin there. So that pin was basically the downfall of black in this game, fundamentally. Hope you got something from it. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.